watched a lot. It's ironic because all of the Disney movies that like cemented my childhood were from their like quote unquote dark ages. And this would, I guess, be one of them. It's really strange because I never remember like rewatching like films from the Disney Renaissance a lot or from their golden age, like back like in the beginnings, which, you know, I don't know, it maybe says something about the movies here, but that's sort of a side whatever. But yeah, it's really fun movie. And I mean, like, you can't really go wrong if you watch it, in my view. So, yeah.
I love the film as well. I was just wondering if there was any good Robin Hood movie out there. I know that The Adventures of Robin Hood by Michael Curtiz in 1939
Yeah.
apparently is great. I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't
Uh,
seen
It's
it
good.
either.
It's
it's
good. I
good, right?
recommend it.
And you, how would you rate it compared to the Disney?
Um, ooh, that's a tough choice. I think the Michael Curtiz one, I think that one's good for the adventure action side of it.
Uh huh.
And this one, I think, taps a little bit more into the lore.
Okay.
So it depends which you prefer.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, because the rest, I mean, the Ridley Scott film was pretty awful.
Yeah.
There was another Robin Hood film of the 2000. I don't remember the name, but that was also quite
I think I know.
disgusting. So yeah, no, love, love, love the Disney one. Yeah,
Awesome.
pretty much.
All right. We'll move on to Michelle's number 10.
Right. So Claudine, this is I was introduced to this movie because of the Criterion Collection, and like when I was really like getting in the grit of it, and I was like really getting into it. This was one of the movies that like when it was announced, like I was looking into it and it was like, oh my gosh, this looks so cool. And yeah, it's definitely highly underrated. Like it's pretty much about this woman, Claudine, as she's trying to just look out for her family, and she ends up meeting this character played by James Earl Jones,
Hmm.
and a bit of a romance blossoms, and then the two try to help each other out. And yeah, it's definitely been a little while since I've watched it, but like I remember like um, it's really cool how like this movie from like I think it was 72. I
Hmm.
think I might be a little off, but it's cool how it was like talking about these things that like we're still talking about now, like with struggling with like housing and also just um, yeah, in some ways like it was like ahead of its time, but like also it was like still prevalent. I'm trying to talk. It was still like relevant then, and it's still now. And
Hmm.
yeah, I definitely think it's really, really well made, and y'all should really look into it. I'm guessing neither of you have seen or even heard of this one.
I've never heard of it. No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's this. Yeah, I got the Criterion.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
oh, matches, I guess, with the I don't know. Um, but yeah, it's really really interesting, especially considering that like it's relevantly like sort of underrated and unknown. It's a
Hmm.
really good movie to check out. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah, I never heard about it. Not
Yeah,
even
it's
like
like
a little bit.
and like you can never go wrong with James Earl Jones in my book.
Well,
No.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say Vader's in
Oh
there, so
yeah, and he's like so freaking good in it as well.
oh,
I
I
mean, like
bet. And I don't think I've ever. No, I have seen him in some roles, but usually he's mostly the voice of
right
iconic
of
characters.
something. He's the
Yeah,
voice of something or someone.
that's right. That's
Right.
right. So no, really interesting, fascinating. I'm putting it on the
Yeah,
watch list.
it definitely shows more of like his dramatic chops, and yeah, you can
Hmm.
see sort of like I know that he was like a theater actor, and then he like got into film, and like
Hmm.
Star Wars sort of like brought him into like huge popularity, but you can kind of see those roots in his performance here.
Yep, for sure.
That's great.
Mhm.
All right. We'll move on to Adrian's number 10.
And Diane Carroll is also really good, but I'll let you go on. uh,
Thank you.
Okay. Diane Carroll.
Cool, cool. So mine is a little bit more of a classic.
mhm.
So the Close Encounters, when Spielberg was a director, first and foremost, right? And he barely wrote his screenplays. He never wrote his screenplays. I can think of three that he wrote, which is AI, artificial intelligence, that came out in early 90s, I believe. You have Poltergeist that he wrote in the 80s, and you have Close Encounters that he wrote in the 80s and the 70s. And that was the first screenplay he's ever written, I believe, besides his short films, of course. But the reason why he needed to write it, even though he wasn't a writer, was because it was so personal to him. And I feel like the film shows that perfectly. You have, what's it called, the Roy Neary, the main character, played by Richard Dreyfuss, who we see him for the first 40 minutes with his family, struggling to be a parent, struggling to be a husband, because Spielberg was a child of divorce, right? And he never quite for he never had forgiven his father of leaving his mother, right? It wasn't until Schindler's List that he came to terms with it. So during that period of Spielberg, that early period of Spielberg, E.T. is also a big prominent film of that. Spielberg wanted to understand why his father did what he did without really understanding what divorce was, and the inherent nature of relationships and whatnot, and the complex nature of it. And he tried to understand him through the character of Roy Neary in Close Encounters, which is why we for the first 50 minutes, nothing happens really. It's all mystery. The aliens are coming. He has that moment with the car and the light beam and whatnot. But most of the time, it's him and his family, and there's a lot of yelling, and the kids, and the wife, and he can't stand his wife, and the wife can't stand him, and he's a child, and and he was never, and he's just not there. He's just not there mentally, and he's not mature enough to hold a family. And at the end, spoiler alert, has anyone seen?
I've seen it.
Everybody has seen it, right?
I haven't. No.
Okay, so I'm not going to spoil, but there's a decision
Okay.
that he makes at the end that reflects all of that. And so it's a deeply personal film to Spielberg, and even though I can't relate on that level, I could really feel the intimate direction that he gave the film. There's not one battle in the entire film. It's all very incredibly subtle, and so it's so powerful, and every frame is so powerful, and every moment of Roy Neary's journey is so powerful. On top of that, we have Francois Truffaut, the French New Wave director, who we've talked about last time with Michelle. He plays his best performance in there. He acts in it, and he plays the scientist.
I did not know that. That makes me really want to rewatch this movie
Oh
to
yeah,
catch
yeah.
him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I had no idea. That's so cool.
Little tidbit about that: Spielberg was a huge fan of the New Wave and a huge fan of Truffaut, and he wanted Truffaut. Well, he had asked, I believe, a bunch of different actors to play the role, which were just regular actors in America, and then he realized that the guy had to be a foreign dude, and he wanted him to be French, and he wanted that European touch to it. And he was a huge fan of Truffaut, and he kind of reached out, seeing if that was even possible. And I think Truffaut's assistant was like, "Oh, Truffaut would love to read the script," and he read the script, and it's one of the main characters in the film. He holds the film on his shoulder at some point, with his beautiful French accent. And so so it was an honor for Spielberg to have Truffaut on his set. For
Like
him, he's a
two
master.
cinema giants and two
Yeah.
cinema legends.
And the cinema legend of the 60s in France. And so obviously Spielberg and Lucas and Scorsese, the movie brats, are of that school, of the French New Wave school.
Mhm.
So that's fucking fantastic. The idea of music being the language that connects alien and humans, that was groundbreaking, and done in that way was truly, truly phenomenal. The cinematography of Vilma Zsigmond, especially at the end, with the way he uses shadows and lighting when the I was going to spoil, but when something happens that's important, that is unthinkable again. And overall, it just feels like an important film. It feels like at the end of the film, you haven't seen an alien movie or sci-fi film. You've seen an important film. So there.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll move on to our number 9, and this one you've probably never heard of. It's a little indie film called Rocky.
Ah, yeah, no.
Yeah,
Um,
you really got me there.
right. I love this movie. I really love Sylvester Stallone. This to me is the perfect example of the underdog story, not just because of the character of Rocky, but of Sylvester Stallone himself. You know, he had to sell his dog just so he could sell the script. Like, he was also an underdog just making this movie. So I really like that aspect of it. And of course, you know, the fight with Apollo Creed is amazing. Love that moment. But yeah, I love this movie, and even though the sequels are kind of cheesy, I like those too. I think I have all of them. I have most of them. They're great movies, and I think this is a great one to start off that series.
Yeah, for sure. Michelle?
Yeah, I've seen it before. I remember like when I first saw it, like as a kid, I was like, "This is whatever." I don't know. I think I was maybe a little too young to like really appreciate it, but I actually rewatched it fairly recently, like last year, and it was like, "Oh yeah, this is great." Like it's yeah, and I think you're right in that it's sort of um, like the prototypical like underdog story, and it kind of like is sort of like kind of what everyone thinks of when they think of like the underdog story, and it's really effective in that, and like the end, and by the end like it's really inspiring, and um yeah.
No, for sure. I was actually one of the only ones that haven't. I've seen it when I was 20 years old. Most people had seen it when they were kids. So I've seen it pretty fairly late in the game. But I enjoy it a lot. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll move on to Michelle, number 9.
Right, so this one is really interesting. So
Love the poster there.
oh yeah. So
Gotcha.
this was based off of like an off-Broadway musical, Godspell, and it was written. The music was written by Stephen Schwartz, who would later on like go
Wicked.
on to he went on to do Wicked. So like, and that's like one of the biggest like Broadway. So this is more of like earlier in his career, and this was kind of like a passion project of his, and it's really interesting because I'm pretty sure I might be wrong on this, but from what I heard, the musical started off as off Broadway, and then the movie came out, and then it went to Broadway, which is really interesting. It's really interesting, and very unconventional.
A little bit like Moulin Rouge then, before its time.
I guess, yeah.
Oh.
Although maybe is that
Moulin Rouge was a movie first and then a show.
Yeah, sort of in the way of like sort of adapting movies into
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, it is very, very interesting. But the thing is, and additionally, like I have a bit of a rocky relationship with like the way that like it's sort of hit or miss for me in the way that like religion is depicted in film, and that's partially because of my history of that. But we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But the thing is, and this is also like a sort of key movie in my childhood because of the way that like it introduced me to like musical theater. But what I like about this one is that it's just goofy and fun, like it's pretty much like these, like, I like to call them improvisational clowns who are just like, reenacting like certain excerpts from the Bible or something like that, but it's given this sort of comedic touch to it. And, I mean, the music done by Stephen Schwartz is really, really catchy. I mean, you got the guy who did like frickin' Wicked, which is one of
Prince of Egypt.
Oh yeah, he also did Prince of Egypt.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean the music. Whenever like I listen to the soundtrack, I'm like instantly transported to my childhood. And yeah, it's like, and this is probably like one of the more like religious films that like I can watch again and again and again. It's very, very fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
To the watch list.
Yes.
There's going to be I think all of your list is going to be on the watch list.
Yeah, and I'll wear that as a badge of honor, man. I'll do it, like,
for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll move on to Adrien's number 9.
classic. It's gonna be all classics.
Yeah, like I'm doing like
Pretty much
this super
you're doing
underground
the
movie,
underrated, I'm
and
doing
then
the
immediately
overrated.
go to like the most popular movie from
The
the 70s.
overrated films. That's what I'm here for.
Exactly.
The Taxi Driver, the greatest film on trauma and PTSD probably ever made. You know, the dichotomy of, you know, the Travis Bickle's violent thoughts and the jazz, the score, the jazz soundtrack behind it was such a phenomenal way to bring the story forward. That was a huge risk. It was raw, it was gritty, it was violent. Everything was he was saying was pretty horrible. Um, and yet the soundtrack was jazzy and all light and fun. And so that dichotomy, I remember seeing that for the first time and being quite impressed by it. That left a huge mark. Has everybody seen it? Just to make sure.
I actually have not seen this because
Okay,
I know that it's going to be a lot.
I'll do without spoilers. But basically, the dichotomy just it felt very uncomfortable. It's a very it was a very eerie feeling while watching the film. Especially that we were always in his mind, and his mind is incredibly destroyed and distraught and grieving and reeling, kind of like the reality of the world. It's an old vet from Vietnam that is brought back to the United States and is completely disillusioned, right, by the world. So it's that's one aspect of it that truly made a mark. Also, I believe it's like one of the first anti-hero like perfectly portrayed on the screen. Like, sure, we could talk about the early gangster film of the 30s, like the Raoul Walsh films and Cagney films and so on and so forth. But they're very well made. You know, the first Scarface and whatnot. But at the end of the day, they either die. You know, it was always very, because of the code, they had to be very politically correct about it. Taxi Driver is incredibly raw. It doesn't it doesn't it doesn't censor itself, and you end up having a character that's just incredibly complex, one of the greatest character study out there. It also established De Niro as one of the greatest actor of all time, probably the greatest actor of all time, at least in that era. You know, incredible performance. And yeah, the language, the visual language was also phenomenal. Like the mix of French New Wave that Scorsese had learned and loved from Godard and Truffaut and Rene, and then mixed it with like classic John Ford American filmmaking. So that was pretty phenomenal. So that's why it's my number 9.
Nice. All right.
I really want to see Taxi Driver, but I know that it's probably going to be a lot. It's going to be
It
pretty
is.
emotionally draining.
It's a rough watch.
But I mean, like, yeah, it's sort of like, I don't know. Maybe I should, like, after watching it, I should just watch, like, I don't know, the most pure movie in existence.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Oh yeah, a little bit of a foreshadowing.
As Harrison would say, it's a depressive movie.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I had to watch like a Disney movie afterward.
Sure.
It's really sad, man.
Yeah. Or just frickin' just go outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is that like?
Yeah.
My gosh.
All right.
All right,
Move on
number
to
8, Harrison.
Yes. So my number 8's Jaws. I'm sure everybody in the world has seen this movie. I love this movie, love the poster of it. I actually have a copy of the movie on VHS, funny enough. And the audio is just awful on it. Did not age well. but it's a classic. I love the cinematography in it, especially in the scene where I don't remember his name, but it's Roy Schneider's character.
Roy Scheider, yeah.
Yeah, the camera like zooms in on his face as he
The
realizes.
dolly zoom.
Yeah, the dolly zoom. Yes, I
Dolly.
love that moment. That's probably the best moment in the movie.
Yeah.
And then I also love Robert Shaw, even though he's a little bit in it, not in it too much. I thought he was a great character as well.
Oh yeah.
Love his little monologue he does about World War II and sharks and all that. Kind of eerie. I mean, we hardly see the shark in the movie, and yet we're super terrified of it just with the music and the camera angles, all that. It's incredible. But Yeah, Jaws.
Jaws, the one and only.
Yeah.
Still afraid of water, by the way.
Yeah, it definitely has a number on you. Like when I was a little kid and I first saw it, I was afraid of going to the beach after that for a while.
Oh,
I think everyone was. I think
still
everyone
to this
was.
day.
Yeah.
Me still to this day, 100%.
All right. We'll move on to Michelle's number 8.
Yeah, so we
Underrated.
yeah.
Underrated film.
Yeah, this one is like
On an
no
obscure list somewhere
Yeah.
in Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, we already kind of talked about this a bit, and yeah, sort of rephrasing what I said, like it's like the sort of like first movie that I think everyone thinks of when it comes to the underdog movie, and yeah, I've also heard that this was sort of like an unconventional sort of win for Best Picture because you had other movies nominated that year. I think like Network, which is more of like the sort of standard movie that you would expect like the Academy to go for, but instead they go for like the sort of kind of inspirational movie about like the underdog or something, which may have sort of like. Well, that doesn't sound too off-brand with the Academy, but I'm pretty sure.
Especially now.
Yeah, but at least maybe not now, but like maybe back then. I don't know. But I think I heard that once somewhere in like some sort of documentary. But yeah, don't really have much else to say. It's really good, and everybody's probably seen it.
It's interesting. Now I understand why you said, when it was asked, so what do you think about it? You're like, yeah, it's I've seen it.
It's good.
And now it makes sense because it's in your list.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome.
Adrien. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
I've been called that my entire middle school.
Oh yeah.
And some of the high school as well. That's right.
That's a classic moment in that movie.
Yeah.
All right. We'll move on to your number 8.
Oof. That's a big one. That's a huge one. Has everybody seen that?
I have not.
This is a quasi-religious cinematic experience. Not because there's religion in there necessarily, but just because it's Terrence Malick. Are you guys familiar with Terrence Malick a little bit?
Yeah.
Have you seen?
I think so.
I've heard the name. Like,
But you haven't seen the movies.
No, I don't think I've
Okay,
seen.
so he's a true visual poet, like no one has ever been, truly. And I know that word gets thrown around, but that is Terrence Malick makes true poetry with his camera, and he is an improv kind of filmmaker. Not kind of, actually. He's a totally improv filmmaker. He's one of the only ones in the industry that can really do what he does. I'll tell you a little bit about the backstory of this film because it took 2 years to film. And it took 1 year to film, and it took 2 years to edit.
Oh wow.
That's how improv he is. It was his second film. His first film was Badlands. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
I've heard of it.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
So it's Martin Sheen and Spacek. I don't remember her first name. And they're they are. Have you guys seen Natural Born Killers?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
So it's about those two serial. It's about those two like American serial killers that were very, very famous in the 60s, 70s. And they were on the run, and it's this couple that was a serial killer. And Badlands is about that. And you could say that Badlands is his most conventional film. And as he went in his career, he was less and less conventional. He became more and more stylistic, and he started to take more and more risk until his films became just true and pure poetry. Tree of Life is one of the films that he made recently. Well, recently, 15 years ago, but recently-ish. It was like it's his magnum opus, and that was just a pure poetry thread. And the same thing with every single film that he's done after that. Knight of Cups, To the Wonder, some good.
Hidden Life, right?
Hidden Life is the last one, correct?
Yeah.
And I believe that's a bit more conventional. But most of his films have been esoteric, um, and some have been huge failures, and some have been masterpieces. Um, it's hit or miss for sure. As soon as he came that, but his early career is a mix between conventional storytelling, um, with narrative, and pure experimental filmmaking. Uh, and it's the greatest landscape visuals you'll ever see in a film. Uh, and I don't say this lightly. This and The Thin Red Line and Tree of Life are some of the most gorgeous shots you will ever see in the entirety of cinema. It's unbelievable. And so it's kind of like, so he made Badlands. Badlands was kind of successful, and so he was given money to make Days of Heaven, and he wrote a script. And on the second week of filming, he dropped the script and said, "All right, guys, we're not doing this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore." Hey, what do you mean, Terry? It was like, no, no. I have a better idea. Let's just figure it out. What do you mean, figure it out? Let's just figure it out as we go.
But the studio loved that.
Right, taking the approach of the new wave. And so he did just that, and so the actors had to figure out the film with him. So some days would last, he could take like a whole day filming the sunset, and sometimes he would be like, okay, we need this kind of lighting, so we only have 2 hours to shoot. And so crew members would be laid off. A lot of people would be fired. A lot of people would quit. Actors would go insane. Again, we're in the 70s, so we're in a time where the directors were kind of doing whatever they kind of wanted to do. This was a different time. This was the new Hollywood time, when the American studios were piggybacking on what the Europeans had done in the French New Wave, which is giving liberty to the auteurs and to the directors. So they kind of mimic the same framework in the US at that time in the 70s. So that's why Scorsese could come. That's why Spielberg and all of these guys, Coppola, could make The Godfather, and these great films could come out, because they were kind of letting a little more liberty to the directors. Now, not as much as in France or in Europe in general, but still much more leeway than they did before, until Cimino fucked it all up for everyone with Heaven's Gate in 1979. So the Malick is in the middle of that, and he makes his movie the way he wants to, and he's getting the money for it. For a year they shoot, and for 2 years they're in post-production. It doesn't work. This doesn't fit. This doesn't make any sense, obviously. But at the end of the day, 3 years later, working hard and changing editors as they went, and just fucking crazy shit, he made one of the most unconventional love story in one of the most beautiful landscapes ever put on screen. And he just takes you in and transports you into this world, into this cathartic experience, and you're just in tears throughout, or at least I was. Funny little tidbit after that is that he was so exhausted by the filming of Days of Heaven, even though it was a massive success. Everyone loved this film. It was a huge success, but he was so tired of filmmaking that he quit filmmaking for 20 years. He moved to the south of France, retired with his wife, and lived out the next 20 years doing something else. I'm not sure what he was doing. I think he was a philosophy teacher before, so maybe he went back to doing that. But he didn't make a movie until he came back 20 years later in 1994 to make The Thin Red Line, which is the World War II film masterpiece. That's my favorite of his. Masterpiece, pure masterpiece. Again, Days of Heaven is a recommendation for everyone, but to really sit down and reel in the experience. It's not something where you'll be on your phone. It's something that you have to truly experience. So
see, now I'm just like putting all of his movies or like the movies that you mentioned like on my Letterboxd watch list, man, because now it's like, okay, I need to look into this person. Okay.
Oh no, this is a big guy. Big director.
Awesome.
That's so fascinating that like you would be so drained by working on one movie that like you would quit for 20 years. Like
that's what 3 years would do. Like like one,
3 years.
like a film, like a regular feature film, a month of
Yeah.
shoot. You know, like sometimes two
Right.
if it's a bigger film. So, well, obviously Marvels go for 4 or 5 months, but still, it's you know, and this is like a few characters in the countryside with the house. You know, it's like really one location, and yet, but there's some complex set
Plus,
pieces
like,
in
how
there.
long is the movie? Like,
It's two
if it's
hours and a half, I believe.
two
I
and a half
believe. I'm
hours.
not entirely
Oh,
sure.
Days of Heaven.
Days of Heaven,
It
correct.
says here that it's 94 minutes. It took them a freaking year to film a 94-minute movie. Oh my gosh.
It's insane.
That's
Peter John Campbell said to your thing, Michelle. The thing about Rocky is this: it is one of the best scripts to study when you wanted to know how to write a script. Among many things, Sylvester Stallone is a great writer. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's what people in film school. That's the go-to for one-on-one screenwriting.
Hmm.
So that, and yeah, cool. So Days of Heaven, everyone.
yeah.
Awesome. Got it on the list.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Let's get into our number sevens. So my number 7 is Superman the movie. 1978. I grew up watching all of these movies. I really love this one though. I love the storyline. I love the music. John Williams does a fantastic score with it. And just growing up as a comic book reader, you know, I loved reading Superman, Batman, for DC, and also Marvel. You know, I'm into both of those. But this movie is really magical because it's kind of cliche, but it really does make you think a man can fly. Like, I love the visual effects they did for that. And it could have easily been a flop, you know. There weren't really any superhero movies at the time. And if this flopped, I don't think we'd have any of the ones we have now, like the MCU movies, DC movies, whatever. Or at least it would have been delayed a lot longer, you know.
Can we say that Superman is the first superhero film of all time, considering the DC or the Marvel universe?
I'd say so, yeah. I mean, they had the serials, but those are TV shows, basically.
And that was before the TV shows?
Yeah, those are in like the 40s to the 60s. That sort
Gotcha.
of thing. Yeah.
Gotcha.
This is the first movie.
Cool.
But yeah, I also love Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. He's a great villain. Very comedic, but also really sinister. Kind of like both of that. Marlon Brando. He's great as Jor-El.
Yeah.
He's got a great voice. Love Marlon Brando's voice.
That's funny. I actually saw an interview yesterday on YouTube of or on TikTok, I don't remember, but Christopher Reeves was talking about how he hated working with Brando.
Oh, really?
Everybody hated working with Brando. Everybody hated.
How Brando just didn't care. Christopher Reeves was talking about the passion, you know, that he has for the craft and for acting and for filmmaking, and that Brando was a terrific actor, but just didn't care. So at least on that set, so he thought it was absolutely terrible to work with him.
We might be seeing more tales about Marlon Brando later on in some other movies that he was involved in the 70s.
Cool.
If you know, you know.
All right, we'll move on to Michelle's number 7.
So at number 7, your timing was like perfect, Adrien, because moving on from whatever.
Yep.
So now Monty Python and the Holy Grail. This, I first watched this a few years ago, and like my dad is a huge Monty Python fan. At least he loves the movies. Like, he loves Holy Grail, he loves Life of Brian. And of the two, this one is definitely like my favorite of those two. I know that there's also Monty Python and the Meaning of Life, but the two sort of main films from that are Holy Grail and Life of Brian.
Yeah.
You know? And yeah, I mean, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it's insanely quotable. It's like, I mean, like, I constantly quote it with my dad all the time. And yeah, it's freaking hysterical. So yeah, like, I'm already like chuckling just thinking about the movies. So I mean, that has to say something So yeah.
What's funny is I've never seen it in its entirety. I've seen the
Mm.
bits. I've seen the famous bits, and I
Right.
think I think it's the funniest film. I think it's the funniest film of all time. I
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet, but in
But
its
you're
entirety.
convinced that it's the funniest
Oh,
movie of
it
all
is.
time.
From the bits, and it's too good. It's too good.
Yeah. Like,
Uh,
oh my gosh, the scene with the rabbit. Oh my gosh.
The killer rabbit.
Yeah, it's so good.
Nathan has decided to grace us with his virtual presence.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
even though we all hate him, but let's just I'll
We hate his
I'll in,
guts. Yeah.
I'll indulge his top 10. Stopping by real quick to say, hey, sure. Here's my list. Uh-huh. So number 10, Duel.
That's the
Number
Steven
9, Solaris. Number 8, What's Up Doc? What's Up Doc by uh
Bogdanovich.
Bogdanovich.
Yeah.
All the President's Men, The Aristocats.
Ooh, yes,
In
classic.
parentheses, finally I have a Disney movie on one of these lists.
Yes.
Alien, Rocky, Hate You Too. That movie I haven't seen, I think. The Godfather, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
I
Yeah,
won't judge you. That is a great movie, Nathan. That
that's
is
the greatest
so.
film of all time, but no one will say it out loud. And then Star Wars, obviously. I love it. I love it. That's a great list. I love that he put Duel in there. That's very ballsy. I love
That
it.
was like Steven Spielberg's first movie, right?
First TV film, correct? No, actually, that's
Or
not
like
true.
his first
But-
like sort of
It's a big break.
prevalent movie. Yeah, yeah.
Correct. The first
Yeah.
prevalent TV film. What's Up, Doc? Underrated comedy, hilarious. And then Rocky. Yeah. Wait, where's the?
Honorable mention.
Oh, honorable mention: The Sting and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Not a fan of The Sting.
need
I
to see
much
both of
prefer
those.
the brothers, the
The
other one by George
Butch.
Roy Hill, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
And then All the President's Men. All the President's Men I did not like. I did not like that film. I know it's a classic and everybody loves it, but I couldn't care. It was Paper Moon or What's Up, Doc, and I chose What's Up, Doc. Yeah, I would go with Paper Moon. Paper Moon was incredibly important for me. But yeah, cool. Thank you, Nathan, for gracing us with your virtual presence.
Yes.
Disgusting
Stop
freaking traitor.
Bring out your dead.
I'm not dead yet.
Bring out your dead.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
All right.
Gosh.
All right. I loved All the President Men. Made a journalism movie feel like an Indiana Jones. Yeah, for me it felt like I don't know what it felt like, but I was bored and I wanted to sleep as fast as possible. But yeah, I know it's loved. It's loved. All right.
We love to hate us.
That's right.
We love
Anything
to hate
else
each
you
other.
want to add to Holy Grail?
No, I think my point has been made. I think we all agree it's
That it's the greatest comedy
just
of all time.
comedic genius, and
Yes.
yeah, it's really, really good.
All right. We'll move on to Adrian's number 7.
So, as Tarantino said recently, Jaws is the greatest movie ever made. He actually said that. He said it's perhaps not the best film, but it's the greatest movie ever made, whatever that means. But I can say that it's that one of the main things to really take out from this. I mean, it's a film that makes no sense, really. It shouldn't have been as successful as it is. We shouldn't still be talking about it today. It's a monster movie. It's a movie, but it's a shark. Why do we care so much about a disaster film? And so it makes no sense. And the reason why I believe, and the sole reason why we still talk about this today, is Steven Spielberg's direction. And I feel like most of the time we can always talk about the story and the screenplay and the cinematography and the acting and everyone together. And everyone did a fantastic job on Jaws. But the directing of Jaws, I think, makes it timeless. Makes that film more than just great. It makes it timeless. And when I'm talking about his directing, I'm talking about his the language of his shots, right? He pretty much created the Spielberg oneer in this movie, even though it was there in Sugarland Express, and it was there a little bit in Duel, but way less. And it was kind of there in his TV movies before that, his old TV movies that he was doing for Universal TV, that no one has ever heard of. There were like Dolly, ins and outs that were prominent. But in Jaws, when you look at the way he blocks his scene, the way he blocks his camera, the camera doesn't do the moving, the actors do. And the actors tell the story. The actors tell their emotions based on where they're placed in the frame. Now, he didn't invent blocking, but when you add Hitchcock blocking to a film like Jaws, which is it was supposed to be a B movie disaster movie, it makes it thrilling and fascinating. And it's something that you feel. It's not something that you watch. But just an example of the scene where the mayor doesn't want to close the beach, and Roy Scheider and Richard Dreyfuss are negotiating with the mayor to close the beach because the shark is coming and he's gonna create mayhem. That scene is all in one shot. And any lesser director would have just put the camera and would have followed them. Spielberg follows them, but changes the angle as he goes. He makes it, depending on who has the power in the conversation, he lowers it, he ups it, and the actors go from one place to another based on how they're feeling. So sometimes they're in the focus of the frame, in the foreground. Sometimes they're in the background. That scene alone, the blocking in this alone is unthinkable. It is genius. And it's that all the way through. The zooms, the way he chooses his focus, the way he chooses to split the focus at some point when Roy Scheider has anxiety. It's the directing of this film is out of this world. It's one of the best directed films of all time. That and the genius, idea that came from a technical catastrophe, which was the shark didn't work, right? I'm sure you're all aware of the story, right? Which is the shark didn't work. They shot all of the beach scenes beforehand, and then they went into the water to shoot the shark at the last minute. And so they had to do something, and that's when Spielberg had the idea. Spielberg, among his collaborators, had the idea to, what if it was the POV of the shark? And then that plus the music made it the most iconic moments in film history. Now, what's interesting as well is that Jaws was being written every night for the next day. Every scene was being written every night. Like, there was a script, but there was a script that was being rewritten every day. So after the shoot, Spielberg would go to Carl Gottlieb's home. Carl Gottlieb wrote the screenplay based on the book by Peter Benshaw, and the both of them would write the scenes of the next day. And I think, if you guys don't know, I'll just end with that. The monologue of Quint, which is Robert Shaw's character, right? The monologue of the USS Indianapolis and the Sharks. That was written the day before by John Milius, who was one of the movie brats, who was a friend of Spielberg. No one could figure it out. Everyone took a crack at it. Spielberg took a crack at it. Carl took a crack at it. Richard Dreyfuss, Roy Scheider, no one could figure it out. Even Robert Shaw tried for his own character, and no one could quite pinpoint what needed to be said for the backstory of Quint, and really to put a soul to the film. And that was brought by John Milius, a friend of Spielberg, who had him on the phone and was like, hey, let me have a crack at it. He wrote it in one go, and he was like, this is the one. And Robert Shaw was drunk when he read it. The first time he was drunk. The second time he was sober. And I believe they took the sober take. But that was the tidbit of history behind the most iconic speech in movie history.
Man. Yeah, the production of that movie was like a living hell to everyone. I'm pretty sure at the end, when the boat is sinking, I'm pretty sure like there was like a whole like trouble with that because like they had to like sail the boat as far out as they could so that like you couldn't see any land nearby, and they also had to like bring in the filming crew, and like at the end when like the boat is sinking, but eventually they realized, oh shit, the boat is sinking. Like, what do we do? Because the actors were there, and they were like, no, but it took us forever to finally get out here. But we need to make sure that the actors are safe. But it took us forever to get, and it was like,
and save the
crazy.
sound department was the
Yeah.
was the thing. No, fuck the actors, save the sound department. I think it was a nightmare of a shoot. Spielberg says that to this day he still has nightmares. It was supposed to be the end. They went like 15 times over budget and overtime. It was a nightmare. It was a disaster. If Jaws. What's interesting, I feel like we should think about this for just a second. What's interesting is that if Jaws was not a success, had not been a success, if Jaws had been a failure, then most likely there would be no Star Wars. And if there's no Star Wars, then there's no blockbuster. If there's no blockbuster, then there's no Marvel, and there's none of all of the films that we have today, right? It's interesting to think about how, because who would have risked another film like Jaws if it was the disaster that it was and it made no money, right?
Yeah.
No one would have risked that. So what would the entertainment world look like? What would it look like if Jaws had not succeeded? I think that's an interesting thought.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy. All right. Looks like
we've been going on about this for like 10 minutes now, but I mean, like, it really shows like the impact that this movie like has on people, and just sort of the current landscape of cinema that we live in now, and the way that it's still prevalent, and that it's still being shown, and it's still being parodied, and
yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Evan Whalen is bringing his top 10 to the mix. So we have Halloween as number 10.
Ooh.
We have The Last Picture Show. Love The Last Picture Show as number 9. Godfather and a half? No, Godfather 1 and 2. I think he's cheating, which is okay. Godfather 1 and 2 at number 8. Aguirre, Wrath of God at number 7. That's a Werner Herzog film. Texas Chainsaw Massacre at number 6. Yeah, of course. Apocalypse Now at number 5. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest at number 4. Alien at number 3. Alien is such a masterpiece. I rewatched this I rewatched it 4 months ago. It's a piece of art. Dog Day Afternoon at number 2, and Days of Heaven at number 1. There you go.
There you go.
That's what it's all about. Evan.
We stan, Evan. We stan.
Yes. That's a great list.
That's a great list. Days of Heaven at number 1. See, he's more ballsy than I am.
All right. We'll move on to our number 6s. So mine is Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah. Tradition.
Exactly. Tradition. I love this movie. Love the music. Really classic. And I love, that they're going through a lot of persecution and a lot of crazy things going on. But then I also love, at the same time, Dad is struggling with the fact he has 3 daughters who are trying to get married, and none of them are following the traditional route. So it's kind of tearing at him, should I let him fall in love, or should we follow tradition? It's kind of a toying at him. So, but yeah, I love this movie. I haven't seen the original stage play. I imagine it's very similar, but yeah.
Oh, I hear it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As a
phenomenal.
theater kid, this is actually one of my weak points, because like I actually have not seen the stage play or the movie, but it's definitely right up there on my watch list. I really, really need to see it. I know. Because I hear fantastic things about it, and this seems to me like one of the more like classic musicals that I would be like, oh yeah, I really want to check that out, because like, some of the classic musicals like maybe don't hold up as well today. Oklahoma, excuse me. So something like Fiddler on the Roof sounds like it would maybe be more up my alley.
Mhm.
Yeah, in terms of like the classics.
It is 3 hours long, so keep that in mind.
It's fine.
But
Whatever.
it's good.
Mhm.
All right, got some more comments here. Jaws
Yep.
deserved the 10. Yep, yes, it did. Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to Michelle's number 6.
Okay, another super underrated one. Okay. So this one, it is a crime how underrated this one is. So Girlfriends, it's this movie that again I sort of was introduced to via the Criterion collection, and I got it like for the Criterion sale, and then I watched it, and it's really shocking that like a movie like this would be released in 1978. This sort of like coming of age sort of movie. The director Claudia Well, I know that she mentioned that like I think she's discussed how in this movie she sort of wanted like the sort of side character that you would usually see. She wanted to make that character be like the main central protagonist, and she wanted to make the more like the character that you would sort of typically associate with like being the main character, make her be the side character. And that's kind of what's happening, because the side character of this movie is the main character's best friend, and she's like, I guess archetypically, or whatever the word is, she's sort of like the prototypic, like sort of beautiful, like
The
has everything.
archetype.
Yes, archetype. I'm so sorry. For some reason, it's hard for words to come out.
To everyone.
Sort of the archetype main character with getting married and stuff, and it's like the main character here. I'm blanking out on their names, but that's okay. Is pretty much feeling like she's sort of falling behind a bit, and that's something that I think all of us can kind of relate to. Just sort of seeing friends like take other paths and wondering, oh man, maybe like just thinking just because your path is like maybe leading in a different place, does that necessarily mean that like, oh, just sort of channels in thoughts of like, oh, am I doing something wrong? Am I falling behind on everyone? And that's something that like was being discussed in this movie from the 70s that like was getting no attention. And like you see stuff like that being talked about in like coming of age movies like now. Like it definitely feels that way. And I actually heard that this was actually a film that Stanley Kubrick was highly praising and was saying to like, hey, check this movie out. It's really freaking good. But I guess nobody listened to him because it's still super underrated. And
It seems like only 3 people have seen it. You, Kubrick, and Peter John Campbell.
yeah,
Those are the 3 people that have seen it in the world.
yeah, alas.
But it's great. I'm on the watch.
It's really good. I definitely want to watch it again. It's great.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, so we'll move on to Adrian's number 6. Oop, don't open Photoshop. Okay, there we go.
The one and only. Everybody has seen it?
Yeah.
I actually have not seen this one.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, I told you there's so many like iconic movies from the 70s
You
that
have the underrated ones. I have the overrated ones.
Yeah. Follow the system, Adrien.
Yeah, that's right. I follow. That's right. 100% follower. So probably the best film noir of all time. I mean, it's arguably we can argue it, but I think it's one of the greatest twists of all time. I obviously cannot talk about it because it is so vital to the experience of the film. And then Harrison, you've seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about in the twist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's truly a twist as groundbreaking as Luke, I Am Your Father. Like it really is. It's obviously not as iconic, but it's if the movie was as iconic as Star Wars, the twist would be as well. It's also most of all the finest screenplay I've ever seen because I haven't read it, but like the structure of it in American cinema, at the very least, I feel like it's the best out there. It's the finest out there. A lot of people are saying it's Casablanca. and argue, they're tit for tat. But I would say that Chinatown is uh, is an example and an incredible commentary on corruption. I'll say
Mhm.
that. And that being said, it's a journey, it's a ride, and you go on this journey with Jack Nicholson, and you never let go until the end. So recommended.
Yeah. Have you
Yeah.
seen any
I
other film noir at all, Michelle?
Yeah, like I'm not as familiar with noir, but like I've seen like um Sunset Boulevard,
Hmm.
Rafifi. Let's see. I actually have a list of the noir films that I've seen. So let me actually pull that up real quick because I have seen others. I'm just like not as, I guess, familiar with the genre.
I
Mhm.
would say out of all of them, this Chinatown's my favorite.
Mm.
It definitely plays with
Like
a
yeah,
lot of the tropes.
like I've seen the Maltese Falcon as well. That's like a signature noir film.
Signature 100%.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But Chinatown, it's definitely a movie I am dying to see. I really want to see it, and yeah,
And it's interesting because it also veers away a little bit from Polanski's style, even though you could see Polanski in there and his fingerprint, but it's not Rosemary's Baby, it's not Repulsion, it's not all the films that he's done before that. It's a very American film. And as you know, Polanski's Polish, so his style is very very different. And he was there a little bit before the new wave, but he was friends with all these guys.
yeah,
So he learned a lot from these guys. And when he makes Repulsion, for example, it's very experimental. Whereas Chinatown is incredibly slick. It's incredibly clean. So that's also interesting. The cinematography, my God, in Chinatown, and Bob Town, the writer, and the story behind it of how he wrote it roommates with Jack Nicholson, and they both wrote it together on the couch at 4 a.m. after 15 beers. I mean, it's yeah. Anyway,
Awesome.
Mhm.
All right, we'll move on to our number fives. Mine is The Muppet Movie.
uh,
You guys seen this movie?
when I was a kid, yeah.
I have not seen this movie, even though like I'd consider myself a fan of the Muppets. I haven't seen this one, which is like often considered to be the best Muppet movie, from what I hear. It's kind of, but like in the Muppet fandom, this is kind of considered to be the best one, you know. So
Hmm.
I know I gotta see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, definitely watch it. I'm one of those Muppet fans. I definitely think this is their best one. Um, I grew up watching The Muppet Show, grew up watching all these movies. This one was always my favorite. There's a lot of cameos in it with people from the 70s or earlier. So if you haven't seen a whole lot of movies from then, you probably won't recognize any of them. Like when
I'll
I was a little,
probably recognize them.
you probably will.
Yeah.
But
But it's
yeah,
like I know my friends who are not as into movies as I am are going to be like, who the hell are these people?
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, I just love it. It's kind of I'd say like a road movie. Like they meet each other all along the way. Kermit starts out in the South and he's moving across to California. So he's meeting them along the way. This is how they all got to know each other to get to Hollywood. Um, yeah, I love this movie. And I love the music. Very iconic, classic. And I love this poster too. This is a
Mhm.
Drew Struzan poster, one of my favorite poster artists. But yeah, I love this movie.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, nothing much to say.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on to Michelle's number
Okay. Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
Where's Nathan?
Where's
Yeah, where's
Nathan? Or did he leave? Did he leave? He
No, he
needs to
left.
be
Obviously,
validated.
if he stayed and he wasn't part of the live, that would make no sense.
This is what you get, Nathan, for not joining us and focusing on your schoolwork. You
Yeah.
get to not be vindicated with Winnie the Pooh.
That's right.
But yeah, it's just like even though this movie is not complex or anything, it's just so freaking wholesome, and it just you can't help but like just have like this warm fuzzy feeling when you're watching it. I think that sort of applies to sort of the Winnie the Pooh movies, you know, and just sort of the franchise in general. But yeah, this is a really like underrated film from like the Walt Disney Company, definitely, because the thing is, it started off as sort of just these different like shorts of Winnie the Pooh that the Disney Company made, and then they decided, hey, let's just make it, put them together and make it a big movie or something that has like some things in the beginning and the end to like strand them together. And yeah, it has a lot of heart, and like yeah, it's just really it's I kind of described it earlier as being very warm and fuzzy, and that's sort of how I would describe it. It's very much a comfort movie in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that this was an anthology movie? So like all of these were short before this came out.
Yeah, so many of them, like, yeah, they were shorts that were released before then. Some of them were like actually made by Walt Disney when he was still alive, and some of them that were made like after his death. So, and this was actually, I'm pretty sure this was sort of released. Yeah, it was also released fairly recent, soon after Walt's death. And so the Disney company was sort of having a bit of a hard time trying to get that Disney touch, you know, to like that resembled the films of Walt Disney, but instead of like, they kept on asking, like, something that it was a great quote that I heard, but instead of like doing what Walt Disney would do, they would often think, well, what would Walt do without actually doing what he, you know, which is interesting. Yeah. So this, I know that this movie was like very successful when it was released, and so it kind of like was able to like help the company when they were still trying to like lick their wounds after the death of Walt Disney. So yeah, if you can't tell, I'm very knowledgeable about this stuff. I could go off for a while, but I'm gonna stop now because yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll move on to Adrien's number 5.
So Autumn Sonata and Winnie the Pooh, same movie.
Yeah, same movie, man.
Same themes, same emotional roller coaster ride, same thing. Has anyone seen it?
No.
No. Okay. So it's a Bergman film, and it's. I know, Harrison, you've seen Seventh Seal. Have you seen other Bergmans?
I just watched Wild Strawberries.
Cool. You liked it?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
And that's it too.
Yep, just those two.
And Michelle?
I don't think I've seen any of his movies.
Okay. Cool.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, I just wanted a little premise because Autumn Sonata is not, it's known, but it's absolutely not one of his most known films, and it's never on his top 10 list. And he's made over 60 films, and in the 20 films of his that I've seen, including all the classics like Wild Strawberries and Seventh Seal and Persona, Autumn Sonata stands at number 1. And it is really one location. It's really a film about a mother and a daughter hashing things out after 40 years of not having done that, of having repressed their feelings and what they wanted to say to each other. It's Ingrid Bergman in her final film. I believe it was her final film. She died right after that. And it is truly the mother-daughter dynamic in the truest form I've ever seen. It's raw, unfiltered. The dialogue, I've never heard that kind of dialogue in another film. Of course, no way will you have that in an American film, and even in a European film or an international film, you'd have that kind of dialogue that is so pure and so in your face and so rough. It's incredibly rough what they say to each other, and it's really about it's hate and love all mixed into one. As Harrison would say, it would probably be his most depressive film he'll ever see. It is truly depressive, but at the same time, in a good Bergman fashion. Of course, you don't watch Bergman to smile, but I can't relate personally to it, but it stays with you till the end of times. And I couldn't believe what I watched when I saw it. What they said to each other, the violence of the words that they used. Eh, Groundbreaking stuff.
That
So
freaking
again,
sounds amazing and right
and
up
and
my
the
alley.
writing, especially all in one location for the most part. And Ingrid Bergman's one. It's hard to say like if it's her greatest performance, but it's up there. And I believe that Ingrid Bergman had a similar relationship with her daughters. And
Mm.
I believe that when Ingmar called her to play in the film, it was she, I believe she had cancer at that time. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe she had cancer, and it was terminal, and she was about to die. And she accepted the role because what the character was saying was what she wanted to say to her daughter. She
Mm.
wanted to
Mm.
say sorry. She wanted to say I wasn't there. I was this very famous actress and I was never there for you. And she wanted to say that out loud. And she said it through Autumn Sonata, through the film. Um, and before she died. And I think that makes it even more powerful. So yeah, Autumn Sonata.
Man, oh my gosh, that sounds right up my alley. So I just do put that on the watch list. I feel
And
like that's all of us.
the poocher just said, a super underrated Ingmar Bergman film. Definitely one of the best behind the camera he is. That is absolutely true. He did stuff with his camera that no one can do. And that's the thing. It's he never did any complex setups. He it was always very simple shots. And yet the sensitivity that came out of that screen, that came out of that lens was unique and unlike any other.
All right.
Mm.
We'll move on to our number 4. All right. Mine-
Total tonal change.
Autumn
Whoa.
Sonata. It's the same movie. Winnie
Yeah,
the Pooh,
same
Autumn
same.
Sonata, and Monty Python, the same movie.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes. We've already talked a lot about this movie, but I'll just add, I love how each scene that they go into is kind of like a different episode or a different scenario they go through. How each of them is super unique and different. I love all the different characters. Like John Cleese plays, for example, like Sir Lancelot is one of my favorite characters. If he's like running for forever, it's like 2 minutes long of him running in place. Hilarious. Um, so quotable, like we said earlier. I don't know what more to add. I just love this movie. And if you read the poster here, it
Yeah.
even adds to the humor. Like,
Makes Ben-Hur look like an epic.
yeah, it's so silly.
Fucking genius.
It sets the cinema back 900
What's up,
years.
4K Lowdown? Great to meet you too, Poocher.
Oh, hey, 4K Lowdown. Good to see you. Make sure to check out his channel. He does some great videos with a couple other guys I know, like Alex and Nate. So, yeah, make sure to
Cool.
follow him, guys.
Another film completely different from some of the other films, which aren't quite the same as this one is. Sets the cinema back 900 years. Oh, it's too good. The thing is, it's too good. It may be too good, like where like you shouldn't exist. Maybe I don't know if I want to see the whole thing because it might be too good.
Yeah.
You know,
Like the poster. Like the poster is probably warning you of its quality.
makes Ben-Hur look like an epic. How do you think of that?
Yes.
Ugh.
I have a DVD version of it, and even the design of it and the back of it has funny stuff like that. It's hilarious the amount of work they put into their comedy.
For sure.
All right, we'll move on to Michelle's number 4.
Okay. Another one
Yes.
from like this was like a staple of my childhood, first of all. And like when I rewatched it for the first time in years, it was like, oh my gosh, this movie is still like as amazing as I remember it being, and it still has like this sort of whimsy that's like irresistible. you know?
Mm-mm-mm.
And I mean, Gene Wilder, this is probably his most iconic performance. At least it's definitely probably the one that like nearly everybody thinks of. Like definitely when I think of Gene Wilder, I think of him in this role. And it's really clear that you can see that like this was like perfect casting, you know? And there's always like you can see sort of the wheels that are turning in the back of his character's minds, like even like, you know, and sort of the facade that he's giving off, but also like what he's internally thinking. And like yeah, and he's also like insanely quotable. Like I quote like that final monologue he gives like so many times to like my dad as well. But like partially because like, you know, it's been memed to death, but also because like it's really effective. And when you see like his like I assume we've all seen this, right? Yeah. When you see his like unadulterated anger, you feel like you've been betrayed by him in the way that like the characters do, because like but then like when he like is like legitimately so happy that Charlie won, you can feel that, and it doesn't feel like like he's being inconsistent with himself, you know? And
Right.
that's a freaking hard like that's really hard to capture. Like and yeah, Gene Wilder is just fantastic. I've been gushing about him this whole time. But the rest of the movie is like still really well, like even though like some of the production design, like you can kind of tell that it's a like plastic.
Yeah.
It's but like it's still like you know, it still has like that look that you know, is filled with no pun intended imagination, you know.
Mm.
And yeah, I freaking love it.
And
Yeah.
and the emotion is there throughout, no matter how, you know, sometimes it aged a little bit,
Yeah.
but the emotion is still there. When I think of Gene Wilder, I think of Nathan. Does anybody else look at the look at Gene Wilder?
Especially in this one.
He looks like Nathan a
Yeah,
little bit, no?
No, I totally
oh
see
my
it.
gosh, he does.
It's Nathan.
It's ironic that we bring up Nathan because he does not like this movie, actually.
Oh,
That's
really? I
funny.
didn't know
Yeah,
that.
he does not like it. He actually prefers the one with Johnny Depp.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I no, like I have that similar reaction to you, Adrian. I have the complete opposite. Like the thing is he's always like yeah, I've heard him talk about like it's he's like the opposite of everyone else, where like everybody loves like the one from the 70s and they hate the one with Johnny Depp. That's the
Yeah.
boat that I'm in. But he's the one that hates the 70s one but loves the one with Johnny Depp.
I didn't know that was that was possible, but an incredible classic.
Talk to Nathan about it. He'll give me shit later.
The butcher said something about, yeah, fun fact, Python's opening credits were actually meant to be a spoof on Ingmar Bergman's films. I remember hearing this. That's right. I remember hearing this. So yeah, there you go. See? Interconnected. Same movie.
Yeah.
Just like Woody Allen movies are supposed to be like, you know, the comedy versions of Bergman films.
I hadn't heard that.
Well, Bergman was Woody Allen's top dog.
Oh, okay.
But you know, speaking of like the Depp film as well, I just gotta say, like the Charlie in this one is like a million times better than the one in the Johnny Depp movie, because in the old one he actually talks and acts like a freaking kid, whereas like in the Johnny Depp one it's sort of this idealized version of a kid.
Yeah.
And like and you know, like in the old one, like they allow him to like, you know, like yeah, be a kid, like yeah, there are moments where like he's selfish and he's frustrated and he legitimately makes mistakes, like the whole scene with like them drinking the fizzy lifting drinks, that was like entirely something that the movie did that wasn't in the books, and it adds like more dimension in that way to like the characters. And yeah, so pretty much screw the Tim Burton version.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Film is subjective and I'm not gonna kill Nathan, whatever, but he's probably gonna give me shit for outing me.
But this one is objectively better than the 2005.
Yes.
You get nothing. Good day, sir.
Ergo, we hate Nathan. Moving on.
That's
Real quick,
another reason for us to.
yes. Real quick about this one. There's a cool documentary on YouTube I saw. I can't remember who made it, but he talked about how Roald Dahl, the original author for the book, absolutely hated this
movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Like he didn't like any of the movie adaptations, except strangely the animated TV version of the BFG, which is really interesting. That's the only movie adaptation that he likes.
not the Spielberg version, huh? The animated.
No. He died before the Spielberg version.
Right.
There was like a 70s BFG movie or something. I think it was made in the 70s that was like for TV. That's the only adaptation of one of his books that Roald Dahl legitimately likes. Yeah.
Go figure.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right. We'll move on to Adrian's number 4.
I'm being too serious. That's the problem. I should have fun more. Like,
yeah, your list is just screaming like you just need to go outside.
Yeah. Right.
Need a nice hug.
It's all one location, very condensed, talking about trauma and regret of the past. I have to have fun. I have to laugh for a second.
Yeah, just go out and get some ice cream and just lighten the hell up.
Yeah. So who has seen it?
I have not seen it.
I haven't either, unfortunately.
Okay, so this, if we were to really give it the respect it deserves, it would take 3 hours. So I'm just going to briefly say, if it's possible, in a Tarkovsky film. First of all, who has seen a Tarkovsky film?
I have not seen any of his movies.
Okay,
but I'm aware of his reputation.
But you know of him and about him, right?
Yeah.
So the same way that Malick is the modern poet of this generation, or last and today's generation's filmmakers, or let's just say today's generation of filmmakers, and Tarkovsky was the poet of last generation's of filmmakers, right? Mm. So in a similar vein as Malick, Tarkovsky brings you into his world and will make you think for the rest of your days. And it is a competent rival to 2001: Space Odyssey, which was kind of like it was a sort of answer to it, but in a much more, because Tarkovsky was not a fan of 2001. You've seen 2001: Space Odyssey, both of you?
No,
but perhaps you have. Okay, yeah. So 2001, right? The sci-fi, the philosophical sci-fi of Kubrick that came out in 1968. For Tarkovsky, that was a very cold and very American way of seeing things, right? We have to remember that we're in the middle of the Cold War, and that Tarkovsky is a Russian filmmaker under the USSR, and that Kubrick is an American filmmaker, right? And the two opposite viewpoints are shown in this film, and you can see a very mechanical and almost a cynical vision in 2001: Space Odyssey, with Al and with our dependence to technology, and how we confront death, and how we confront ourselves, right? How we deal with ourselves, how we deal with our problems, right? And then Solaris is a less mechanical, it's a more human answer to that. It's a warmer response to this. It's about human beings, and especially that human being trying to reel in his past and to let go of his past so that he can finally move on and innovate in the present and therefore the future. And so we get to see his regrets with his father, with his mother, with his wife, especially through the lens of sci-fi. So we're in space and we are discovering his trauma. And it's very slow, and it takes its time, and it really is a meditation. It's a meditation on all of these themes, on science. It talks about science, it talks about evolution, it talks about technology, all of the while under the foundation of love and regret. And so we're in space with him for 3 hours, and we meditate with him for 3 hours, and you come out of it reborn. So that's what I'm going to say about it, because I can't get into too many things. And of course, this is a film that you can hash out and analyze scene by scene. but again, an experience and an experience to be had. I was lucky enough to see it at the theater where I could really sit down for 3 hours straight. I wasn't bored a second. I was in it, transported, and today I love it more than a week ago, and I loved it more a week ago than the week before that. So it's a film that stays with you, and that you come to love and love even more as as time goes by. So
I remember last month when we talked about 2001, how Nathan prefers this over
yes,
the one.
actually, it's in his. Let's see. So the Poocher said that Solaris is a must-watch. He's obviously right. And then it was number 9 for Nathan.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it was on his list.
So, yeah, two very different than 2001, and yet very similar in a lot of ways. So to anyway.
Cool. All right, we'll move on to our number 3s now. There we go.
Tonal change again.
Yes.
Whoa. This is just pointing out that Adrien just needs to go outside.
Yeah, this is actually this is hilarious. Wait, Harrison, is that you? Yeah, that's you.
Yep, this is
Yeah, the thing is like I love those films, but I don't know why I don't put them.
You'd
in my
rather
top.
just sit down and be sad.
Well, yeah, I think there's
3
something.
hours.
I don't know. Whatever.
It's okay. It's okay.
Go ahead, Harrison.
You're good. I'm a huge Mel Brooks fan. In fact, I had a hard time deciding between this and Blazing Saddles. Those are my 2 favorite ones by him. But I went with this one because to me, I think this is his best parody movie. So he really, really got the old Universal monster movies really, really well. Like they even used the original equipment from Frankenstein to create their monster in this movie. So put a lot of effort into it. It's shot in black and white. But it has all that Mel Brooks slapstick humor and double entendres and all that. I love it. It's really, really excellent movie. Another great example of Gene Wilder. Yeah, I actually have a poster of it right here. It's my favorite Mel Brooks movie, hands down.
Awesome.
Have either of you seen this one?
I've seen it.
No, I haven't seen it since I was a kid, though. I have to rewatch it.
I'm actually of the opinion. Well, I think it might be a little overrated in my opinion, but I guess I can understand like how a lot of people would really like it, and I guess the influence it also would have for like parody films, and yeah. So that's my 2 cents on the movie. But
the Poocher said, "Give me that Gene Wilder love."
Yeah.
Oh,
2 of his movies today.
Mm-hmm. Such a freaking talent.
We'll go on to Michelle's number 3.
Okay, we already talked about this movie a couple times, and there's not much I can add. It's amazing. I mean, similar to Leader Rocky, but I would say more so with Jaws. Like I remember I was terrified for years to watch this movie, but then it was my brother who actually got me to finally watch it. And I'm really happy for that because I think I probably wouldn't have watched it sooner if it wasn't for my brother, like finally like pushing for me to watch it. And, yeah, I love this movie. Like the thing is, there are some people who debate as to whether this is a horror movie or not. I think it is. Yeah. I mean, come on, it's kind of obvious.
It's a lot of movies in one. It's a disaster movie. It's a horror movie. It's a drama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
it's a comedy.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, the thing is, it's like usually when I watch a horror film, it's usually I'm watching it because it has like significance or like it like or it's like this must-watch movie or something. And yeah, this Jaws is like I honestly it's hard for me to pick probably between this and probably Rosemary's Baby as to like which one is probably my favorite horror film. I'm trying to think if there's one more, but like those ones are definitely definitely like Jaws and Rosemary's Baby, but I think Jaws might slightly be ahead right now, but that might honestly change. But yeah, it's fantastic, and I really am excited for the next time I watch it because it's really good. Yeah.
I have to ask, have any of you guys seen the sequels? I haven't, but I
I'm
hear
not.
they're terrible.
The thing is,
No.
if you think I was terrified to watch this, I'm even more terrified to watch the sequels.
And,
in an ironic way. In an ironic way, of course.
and I have
but,
too,
like,
and I have too much respect for myself.
yeah, yeah, that too. I'm
the-
not willing to like trudge through the like mediocrity and just awfulness of Jaws sequels.
Evan Whalen said a bit
I am
back.
terrified of how horrible those movies are going to be. That's what I am.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Evan Whalen said Chris Tolkien hated Lord of the Ring. Well, it's a horror movie for sure. The Evan Whalen said earlier, Chris Tolkien hated Lord of the Rings. Really? I didn't know that.
Reminder of who
Christopher
Chris
Tolkien.
is.
I didn't know that he was alive when Lord of the Rings came out.
Wait.
Okay. Chris Tolkien hated Lord of the Rings. Stephen King hates The Shining. Yeah, that we know. Authors don't know. Yeah. The I didn't know the Tolkien one. I thought he was dead when Lord of the Rings came out. Wasn't he dead?
Hold on.
Well,
He
Chris
died
is
in
the
20.
son.
Hold on. I just searched him up. He died in 2020. January.
No, Christopher Oh, Christopher. Sorry. Yeah,
We're confusing it with J.R.R.
I thought we were talking about J.R.R. Tolkien. Yeah.
Christopher Tolkien is the
He's
son
the son,
of J.R.R.
correct?
Tolkien.
Right. So he doesn't count as much. He did write a little bit. He did write a lot of the Silmarillion, but you know. Oh, anyway.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Wait, it does. 1 second, guys. It smells like.
Smells like Teen Spirit? No.
Smells like burn shit. If I go up in flames, it'll be your fault, Harrison.
Yes.
It will be a good show.
Yes.
All right. The 4K lowdown has seen all of the Jaws movies. Well, that's great.
We hope your sanity is well.
All right.
Dude, Adrien's number 3.
Oh shit, we're already there. Yeah, again, see? Again with the press shit.
Yeah.
It will never stop. And I keep repeating the same thing. It's the best anti-hero movie of all time. Okay, yeah, I mean you've both seen it. No one has seen it?
No.
Okay, so
I think this is similarly. There's a pattern here. A lot of us haven't seen them because we know that it's going to be like really draining and take out a lot of energy, and it's going to make us feel depressed for like a week.
That's true.
I think there's a pattern here. I think we need to catch on to.
No, I agree. And so I'm just gonna say very quickly. I mean, I can't really spoil, but it was the first time I saw in my life at that point an anti-hero that had no redeeming qualities whatsoever. It's just an awful human being from beginning to end. I'd never seen this in a film before. I didn't know you could do that in a film. Now, everybody talks about your main character has to be at least a little bit relatable. I mean, Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver, sure, he was tough to relate to, but he had redeeming qualities. This guy has none from beginning to end, and I thought that was a fascinating approach into mental health, serial killing, ultra violence, and the psychology behind it. And this film does a spectacular job at that. I would say it's one of the greatest opening sequences of all time as well. And that's about it, because if not, I get into spoilers.
4K Lowdown says Adrien did sound very impressed
by that Jaws movies. It's impressive. Don't get me wrong, it's impressive. I couldn't do it, so it's impressive.
All right. Move on to number 2.
Hey.
Godfather. I I don't know what else to say about this movie because
Just the greatest movie of all time.
yeah,
It's-
right.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone here has seen it, right? I assume.
No,
I have not. I have not.
Oh yeah, Michelle has not. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I won't get too much into it then, but I'll just say this is definitely one of the best, if not the best, American movie. Um, love Coppola's cinematography. Even on VHS, I have it on VHS. It looks
Of
incredible.
course you do.
The coloring, all
Like,
that is fantastic.
it feels like it's between this and Citizen Kane that's like considered the best movie of all time, or
Yeah.
at least like in America, you would say, which I think is really interesting. These are sort of the two that are largely associated, or at least are in like the top 10 in like lists from like big critics or magazines or whatever. So
I think
it's
The Godfather.
so it's probably pretty good. It's probably pretty good.
It's
It's
really
okay.
good. It's
the-
okay.
I think
It's okay.
The Godfather is a true gem. It's a true jewel, if I may say so. Which is basically it's really a perfect film. I mean, I think we could say that a perfect film doesn't mean it's the best film. It means it's a perfect film where every single department is flawless, and it ends with a bow tied up, and here you go. So I love it, and it's hard not to love because of how perfect it is.
Agreed. Have you seen the second or third one, Adrian?
Yeah, of course. I'm not as big of a fan of Godfather 2 as the rest of the people. I really like it. I really do. And especially love the De Niro sequences, right?
Yes. Yes.
But
As Vito. Yes.
especially beautiful sequences. But the Michael Corleone stuff is really good for the most part. Especially the second act, everything with Fredo, everything with his wife, all that's great. And the
Mhm.
descent and madness and in hell is really cool. But there was stuff in the first half I can't quite pinpoint that I was just a little bit underwhelmed by, especially when he goes to Cuba and there's this whole plot line and a little bit.
Yeah, I
But,
agree.
and the third one is whatever.
The third one.
The third one is whatever, but the ending of the third one, there's really good stuff in the third one, especially the scene on the stairs, which is an ode to the Roaring Twenties, James Cagney, and that's a brilliant moment. That's a brilliant moment.
Yeah. I have an uncle who loves the Godfather movies, and he's like, you know what? I think the third one, like, it gets a little too much flack because it has to live up to the Godfather 1 and 2. It's so, like, I have a feeling that, like, Godfather 3, like, I haven't seen any of them, but, like, I hear a lot of people say it's like an underwhelming Godfather movie, but it's not like a necessarily, like, awful movie,
It's not awful, no.
you know?
It's not awful. There's some
It's just,
good
like,
stuff in there.
compared to, like, the two juggernauts that are
Yeah.
the Godfather Part 1 and 2 and what they were able to achieve, I guess.
Yeah, especially one. The one is. I feel like two. I think where I don't want to say fails, but where I've been underwhelmed is in the lack of focus because it's two storylines at the same time.
Right. It's very juxtaposed.
It's juxtaposed, and I understand why they did it, and it's really cool that they did. I just don't think that that they succeeded as well as I wanted them to. I guess.
Mm-hmm. All right. 4K Lowdown says Clockwork Orange takes you to a dark place. It's a brilliant film. And then Peter says, let's see, this movie is amazing, but
He's
does
talking
not-
about Solaris.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Okay. Interesting. I didn't know there was a book for it.
I didn't read. I knew there was a book. I didn't read it. Though.
I know there's a book trilogy for The Godfather, I think. I think it's
No, they're talking about Solaris.
Oh, Solaris. Never
Yeah,
mind. Then I really didn't know that it was based off of.
No, I knew it was based off a book, but it's just like Arthur C. Clarke, wrote 2001 at the same time that the screenplay was being written. By the way, he wrote it with Kubrick.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, Mario Puzo, he wrote the book that the movie's based on too.
Correct, of The Godfather, who worked very closely with Coppola. during the writing of the script.
Mhm.
I think he co-wrote the screenplay actually.
I think his name is on the poster here, even.
If on the screenplay.
By, yep.
Oh yeah, yeah. He co-wrote the screenplay for sure. Oh,
All right. Let's go to Michelle's number 2.
Okay, so this is kind of
a small movie, underrated.
yeah,
Little indie movie,
really,
don't
really, really small movie. I don't think any of you have heard of it.
No.
Really a hidden gem of the. I'm kidding. I'm gonna stop now. I'm gonna
A
stop
hidden
now.
gem of the
No,
cinema.
and if anything, this is probably the movie of the 70s. I would say because it's. I mean, it's so ingrained in our culture. It just besides like pop culture, I think just I mean, it's so ingrained in like so many of like the things that we see now. Like we still see like Star Wars in the film and its sequels being parodied, and yeah, like as commercial as Star Wars has become because of Disney, like you know when you go back, like it's crazy to think that like George Luke, like just the whole making of the movie like was pure chaos, and nobody was expecting this to be the like just iconic film that it ended up becoming,
Mhm.
and yeah, I mean for good reason. It's just a really like well told, like it's I guess like an action film, yeah, but like it also like introduces like these themes about philosophy, and interestingly enough my history class actually showed it because like George Lucas was like I think he had like these overtones of like religion that related to Hinduism, and we were learning about like the history of India or something, and that's how he interwove which was interesting. So I don't know. This teacher ended up getting fired. I wonder why, but
Because he was telling the truth.
That's right.
yeah, man.
Conspiracy.
But no, but like additionally, like in the Star Wars movies, you can really see that sort of philosophy and these sort of themes of like being prevalent in the movies, and definitely like in the original and like the original trilogy. I feel like I'm kind of rambling now, but I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, like the thing is, I almost didn't see it when I was a kid because like I was terrified of everything, and I thought this movie was going to be too scary. But then my parents were like, "No, just watch the movie. It's not," and they were right in that assessment because like, yeah, and it's a classic, and like I said, it's like the film of the 70s. It feels like because of the way that it still is ingrained and impacts just culture, I would say, honestly.
I mean, like it's so I said that Solaris we would need 3 hours to cover it. This would need 3 days. So
Yeah.
3 days
Well,
straight.
panel.
So it's normal to.
And it's sort of strange like to talk about it because it's like, well, what else can be said
That's
can
already been said 1,000 times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just really, really freaking good, and Disney's kind of dragging it through the mud right now, and I'm really annoyed.
Star Wars, it's really good because that's
Yeah.
true. It's at the end of the
Yeah.
day, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Harrison,
We'll read this. Without John Williams, no Star Wars. Music truly elevates the movie itself. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
John Williams is a freaking icon, and the 70s is really like like with like Jaws, Star Wars. Did he do the Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Did he do that?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So and I feel like the 70s is like when his career kind of like kickstarted, or at least really like skyrocketed.
started with Sugarland Express. Actually, it was.
Well, I don't know. It feels like a lot of his like.
No, but that's the
iconic-
70s. You're right.
Yeah.
It's the 70s, and so it's
Yep.
it's
Oh,
it
okay.
started just right before that. Right
Okay.
before, I mean, Sugarland Express, then Jaws, then I believe Star Wars, and then
And
Close
also
Encounters.
Superman. He also did the score for Superman.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. So no,
And
so he started before. No, so he started.
So like he's done he's done music for like at least one movie that is on all of our lists. So
Even 2, I think.
yeah,
I think-
yeah, probably minimum 2 for. So it's like he's just so freaking amazing, and yeah, he'd definitely be like, you could debate as to whether he's like maybe the greatest film composer.
Yeah, him and Morricone. It's debatable between the two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll save it for mine because obviously it's on my list, but I got the poster right there.
Yeah.
And my namesake is Harrison Ford. My dad is a huge, huge Star Wars fan.
Oh my gosh.
Oh shit, Harrison! Oh wow, that's
Oh my
amazing.
goodness.
Yes.
You are oh my gosh.
That's great.
So we watched it religiously when I was a kid. It's one of my favorite series, so it makes me sad seeing what they're doing with it now. But
Yeah.
I love being able to go back to these ones.
Freaking mouse. I could so angry. No, I agree with you. I am eternally going to be so angry at Disney for like just having no plan for like the new trilogy, and now they're just like trying to milk this cow for all that it's worth.
Churning
So-
them out.
Yeah.
Yep. 4K Lowdown says Star Wars was the first movie I watched at a drive-in.
Mhm.
Wow, that would have been cool to see in a drive-in theater.
Yeah.
Okay, Evan, Jaws, Close Encounters, Superman. Yeah, these are all John Williams.
Honestly, yeah. Like honestly, the movies from the 70s just give off like serious like drive-in movie theater vibes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to Evan's number. I'm sorry, Adrian's number 2. I was reading
And
the
the
chat.
tonal shift will be yeah.
You can skip it.
Okay,
I mean, have you both seen it or no?
I
I
haven't.
haven't. Mhm.
You have,
so
Michelle? Or you said no? No.
I'm so sorry. We are just
No, no, no,
criticizing
it's-
you
it's-
for your depressing movie taste.
All my depressing films are not getting an audience. the Barry Lyndon. Okay, so
Like
no
I
spoilers.
don't have an audience for different reasons. It's because nobody has freaking heard of the movies that
Right,
that I
right.
have. You don't have an audience because nobody wants to watch your movies.
Yeah, that's right. That's
because they're like 3 hours long and they're super depressing.
That's right. Except for 4K Lowdown and the Poocher. They're on my team.
Yeah,
But
they're on your
and
team.
Evan, I think, has seen some of them. Anyway, so so yeah, Barry Lyndon, another 3-hour movie. Incredibly slow.
You're not making
You're not
good
selling
case here. You're not
The main character is barely relatable as well. He's an awful father, and he just makes mistakes after mistakes and really never learns from them. So but again, all that done in such a slow pace that you just want to shoot yourself before we even get to the intermission. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why it's in my number 2. No, it's think of it as a painting. It's done. It's how can I explain this? It's literally 17th century England. It's 17th century. The romantic portraits of that era, right? You know what they look like.
Baroque.
Well, imagine a walk through that museum visually within a character study, and that's Barry Lyndon. It's every single frame could be a portrait in a museum. Every single one of them. Every single zoom, every single move of the camera is done in real time. And it feels almost like you're experiencing the lives of these people in slow motion. It's truly an experience like no other. It's you're like the way Barry Lyndon is going to ask for Marisa Berenson's hand in to dance, right? To get to know her, to flirt. The way he walks, the way the music comes in, classical, all of the greatest classical themes, all the greatest classical music is in that film. And it takes its time. And sometimes we're in silence for 10 minutes, reeling in the experience of these characters. It is being in a museum, living through those paintings. That's, in a nutshell, how I would describe Barry Lyndon.
Didn't they use lenses that were on shuttles?
Yes. Okay. Yes. So the it's all natural lighting, and so
Yeah.
for the first time ever, because lenses couldn't get lighting. So my words. The lenses that were used at the time did not have the aperture to bring in the light that was necessary so that we could see what's on the screen in low light. So what they did is they commandeered NASA to build custom-made lenses that they had used for their space shuttles, so that it would be an extremely wide-angle lens. I believe it was like 9 millimeter lens with an extremely wide aperture, so it could bring in the light, so that you could shoot in low light, in low enough light that you could use natural lighting, which is basically candles and fireplaces and whatnot. And so it's majestic cinematography, and so unique because it was never done before. Yeah.
Nice. I'll add it to the list.
Yeah, like I have like a boxed set of like the essential films of Stanley Kubrick, and I really need to see like more of his movies. I've only seen The Shining, which is really good.
It truly is.
Yeah, but definitely Barry Lyndon is one of those that like I know I gotta see. Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Tonal shift. I'm expecting a tonal shift.
3, 2, 1. Star
Hey!
Wars.
Back
Real quick.
like Star Wars, then to Barry Lyndon, and then back to Star Wars.
That's right.
Right? Exactly. So I have here the last time we had the original trilogy of Star Wars before the special edition. I treasure these.
Oh yeah, I imagine.
No, I love this movie. I think it is one of the greatest movies of all time, if not the greatest. I don't know. It's hard to decide for me because I like this and Casablanca on the same level.
No, yeah, Casablanca. You remember we talked about this. Casablanca is your greatest film, and this is your favorite film.
Yeah. Anyways, like I said earlier, Harrison Ford's my namesake. I have all kinds of books, video games, all the movies. Been collecting Star Wars toys, all of that since I was a kid. I've just been surrounded by it. And this one in particular, I love more than the others because I just love how it really taps into the hero's journey, especially by Joseph Campbell, his Hero of a Thousand Faces. Really love how George Lucas goes into that. And also the story behind the scenes, we talked a little bit about earlier, how it was a total disaster. Like, this should not have been a success, and yet somehow it was. Somehow it all came together. Somehow George Lucas's vision came to the screen. You know, nobody wanted to do this. And a good documentary that just came out recently,
ILM.
ILM, yes, on Disney Plus. I highly recommend that.
It's so good. It's
So good.
incredibly. It's incredible how good it is.
Yes. So, just the fact that this movie has had a huge impact, there are more things he had an impact on too. Like, he created what was called Edit Droid, and we know that today's Avid. You know,
That's right.
we all use that in filmmaking. He created ILM, which all the Marvel movies use, even the Star Trek movies use. So this movie not only kickstarted the blockbuster era, it kickstarted the digital era that we know today. All the movies we either love or hate today, we all owe to Star Wars.
Hence why I brought the thought earlier, what if Jaws had not succeeded?
Right.
Star Wars wouldn't have been a thing, and then what kind of content would we be having today? I'm actually really intrigued in that.
Yeah. Probably more Taxi Driver. I don't know.
Yeah, we should go back in time and then fuck up Jaws and then fuck up the release of Jaws and then see how it goes.
See how that goes.
And then like the entire world is desolate and
Pretty
like,
much post-apocalyptic as soon as you get to 2020.
Yes.
All right, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Let's
in
go
the
on
same
to
tone, I
Michelle's.
believe.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Hey.
Wow.
So this, yeah. Okay. So I got to
Amazing.
give some backstory on this one. So I first saw this movie when I was like in 8th grade or something, and I was like starting to get really into the medium of animation, and I still have a ton of respect for the medium. And when I saw this, it was like unlike any other animated film that I had ever seen. It felt so it had a maturity that I hadn't seen before, and it had this like the themes as well were like unlike any that I had seen like portrayed in an animated film. And additionally, this was made by like a pretty small studio, like Independent Productions, and it was made by this one person like from America who loved this book that was written in the UK. And he was like, I love this book and I need to do something with it. I don't know what, but I need to do something. And you really get the sense, like if you look at behind the scenes, it like honestly like everything seemed to be like against them, because this was like, a much like smaller studio with like a lot of passion behind it, but like, there were like a lot of obstacles, that they had to go through. And like you still see, and definitely the movie, like I would like really like Ralph Bakshi with like his sort of adult oriented films definitely paved the way for more movies like Watership Down to be created. But it's really interesting because like you have like these characters who like never really act like humans. They feel like they're always acting like animals, and they're interpreting the world that is in an animalistic way. And the thing is, like, I loved the movie so much that I ended up reading the book. I think this was like the second movie that like I loved so much that I wanted to read the book, and the book is like my favorite book of all time. And I always go back to this movie, and like even though I would say like the book is better, like the movie still like retains so much of the spirit from the original novel, while still like managing to be uh like finding ways to like have an identity of its own. Like there's like an entire sequence that's like with like a song by like Art Garfunkel. And like some people think that scene comes out of left field, but honestly I feel like it enhances sort of the themes of like brotherhood between Fiber and Hazel. And I also think like it's like really melancholic, but like it just matches the scene so perfectly, and it really encapsulates sort of the spirit and message of Watership Down as a whole. And yeah, really that being of like the quote that's featured on like the poster is, all the world will be your enemy, prince of 1,000 enemies, and when they catch you they will kill you, but first they must catch you. Sort of that strive to survive in spite of the whole world freaking being against you. And that doesn't it obviously applies to the life of a rabbit, because their goal is pretty much that, just survive, because the world seems to be against them. Like of course like predators, but also their fellow rabbits and also humankind. And but it's like in spite of that they continue to try and push forward for the possibility of longevity and passing on that longevity to their loved ones. And if you can't already,
that sounds amazing.
I know, right?
Looking at the pictures right now, it's wow. I can't believe it does ring a bell somewhat, but like I don't think I've seen it. But it's that's amazing.
Yeah. So if you can't tell, I have a lot of interest and love for this movie. And yeah, it's definitely probably like I wish that like the thing is, what was great about this movie was that it was a really big success in the UK, and was even able to prompt Martin Rosen, the director, writer, and producer, to like make another movie based off of a Richard Adams book, The Plague Dogs, which actually was so depressing and sad that it ended up being a bomb, and they weren't able to make more movies, which is sad because like you don't see as many movies like this being released now, you know. And I wish, like, there's a part of me that wishes that more movies like Watership Down and The Plague Dogs were released today. But then, like, I'm thinking, well, you know, it's cool that, like, these movies were, like, made in such a short time span between each other, and they were sort of in this little bubble, and they get to be these underrated gems that people can experience for the first time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Just 69mega.com said, have a good time, find your love. Just wanted to just put it out there. Yeah.
Groovy.
That's very nice,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. But just something else that I want to bring up. I know that like I've been going on a while for this movie, because like I think I'm the only one who's going to have this list or have this on the list. Something as well that I love about this movie is the voice acting. The voice actors like were like it like similarly to like the way that the animals are written and the way they behave. Never once do the actors feel like they're like animals trying to impersonate humans. They feel like still animalistic. They feel very grounded in sort of the world. And I mean, like, this was really the first movie that introduced me to the legend himself that is John Hurt, and just he voices like the main rabbit in this, and like his performance has this real groundedness to him, and like it's like I can't imagine anyone else like playing the role. And additionally, like you also have other actors. These were very much like British character actors of the time, and they're not like household names. I would say there's actually Zero Mostel is actually in this movie, and he plays a really hysterical character. I think you'll know which one he'll play. I would say like the two biggest names in this movie were John Hurt and Zero Mostel, and everyone else was more of like sort of like lesser known, like, but like they still like provide like the thing is I can't imagine their voices being any different than how they're provided in the movie, you know? And it's like wonderful all across the board. The movie is honestly worth watching just for the voice acting alone, and it's that nice sweet spot that I really like. So I love this movie, and it's like the thing is, and I know that like some people like try and like measure like, okay, how to figure out which movie is like your favorite. And one way is like figuring out like which movie you've watched the most. If that were the case, then this would be my favorite movie. If we're talking about movies that I've seen the most times over and over again.
Okay.
Yeah. So that has to be some kind of compliment to the movie. So yeah, I would highly recommend reading the book as well, but the movie is very well made additionally. Yeah.
Cool.
So there you go.
Isn't it your YouTube logo too?
It is. It is one of the characters from the film. And that's another thing. The film also gets very stylistic. I mentioned it with the Bright Eyes scene, but also there's a scene like in the beginning of the movie that I don't want to give away because it's a super cool art style, but also in the way that it depicts. Oh, that's another thing about this movie. It sort of creates this whole culture for the rabbits where they have their own lores, philosophies, and religion. And the way that they present sort of the more spiritual aspects of the movie, they go for a more like almost stylized kind of way of depicting it, and it's really, really cool, especially since like most of the movie like has very like realistic colors, character animation, and character designs. It's very much supposed to be set in reality, so when the movie does get more abstract or stylistic, it definitely has a clearer like meaning to it.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I own the movie. I haven't watched it yet, though.
Yeah, it was also the first Criterion I ever owned. It was the first one I ever got.
Wow, it's on Criterion.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's one of three. It's one of only 3 animated films to be on the Criterion Collection: Fantastic Mr. Fox, Fantastic Planet, and Watership Down. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Wait, the Pixar not?
What's that?
The Pixar's are not there?
No,
Why?
Interesting.
because they're mainstream.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because they're too mainstream. Plus, Disney probably already has the licensing for like
I wonder
the
if the King of the
distribution.
Mockingbird would be on there. I think it would
King
be
of the Mock. I really want to see that movie. I know it was
Me too.
super influential for people like Isaiah
It's
Takahata and a bunch of direct like
yeah.
animation people, but
It deserves its spot on the Criterion list. But
yeah, especially since like it costs a freaking fortune to just get the DVD. So
look,
it costs a lot to get the DVD, and I really want to watch that movie because I'm an animation nut, and I
Right.
have to watch it because it's like, yeah, that's another thing. The thing is, like, I feel like in the 70s, you also had this sort of pivot towards more adult-oriented films for that animated films because, like, during the 70s, Disney was pretty rocky, so more animation, so more people were thinking, hey, let me see if I can try and like do whatever. And that was really when Ralph Bakshi, who would be this really influential animator and just sort of person in the history of animation, that's when he really created like just adult films, like films explicitly for adults, and like Fritz the Cat, Heavy Traffic, and even though like his movies might not be for everyone, you can't deny that like they had an impact in allowing animation to be perceived as like this more like as this medium that like can be enjoyed by like several different people, and not just kids. Yeah. And it feels like Watership Down is kind of like a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of people because but I hope you're okay that I'm like rambling about this.
No,
but,
that's
like
fine.
the director, the thing is he wanted to make sure that the poster made it clear that this was not meant for children. So the main poster that you see on here, that was sort of the poster that he had in mind because it's supposed to depict this character. It already kind of looks a little distressing, right? You like if you were to look at that picture, like you would think,
it looks almost horror.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So exactly. So you would probably think, maybe I shouldn't bring my child to see this movie. So he was always shocked when he like heard parents saying, "How could you make this movie for my child, you monster?" And then he was like, "Well, if you looked at the poster and you brought your child to it, you shouldn't have brought your child to it, you idiot."
Right.
Yeah. And I also want to add that the score is fantastic. I love the score so much. It has so much character to it and personality. And I'm just going to stop now because I've already talked for a long time. But if you can't already tell, I freaking love this movie. And I will advocate for people to check it out till the day I die, probably.
I want to see.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Tonal shift.
Here we go.
Nope.
Oh.
Nope. No tonal shift.
I am actually kind of surprised. Well, there's a bit of a tonal shift. Like you have this depressing movie about bunnies, and then
yeah, that's true.
And then
you're on the other end.
Yeah, but also funny, like the tonal shifts. Like we went from, I'm wondering what it was. We went from I think we went from one film, and then Barry Lyndon, and then like I think Harrison then had that movie, and then we go from me having Star Wars, and then you, or it was some sort
Everyone had Star Wars at some point. Just me and Harrison got it for number one.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Watership Down film on Letterboxd right now, and it's pretty cool. They have the 3.8 rating. Ooh, there's like some people that hated it. Some people say it's way too violent.
Come on. The thing is, the movie is not as violent as it's portrayed. Like, really, if you look at the movie, it's like, honestly, when I saw it for the first time, like, I was expecting it was going to be like so much gorier, and it was like, oh no, you're just, it's honestly not that bad. I would say there's like one scene that like really leaves its impact with what it implies, and I'm not going to give it away because it's so impactful, it's so powerful, and it's like really effective.
That's super cool. I'm actually gonna I'm gonna put that in the watch list right now.
Yeah.
So,
but
there you go.
Yay.
All right. This actually is really cool.
Yeah. And
Even
it's
though,
also like really not long at all. It's like less
oh,
than
cool.
90 minutes.
Oh, cool,
So
cool, cool.
it's really
Well,
short.
you know, my favorite are like 3 hours, 3 hours and a half. So that will be a
Yeah.
big
I
shit change.
decided to spare all of you by like making my
That's right.
favorites like 90 minutes to 2 hours.
That's
Yeah.
right. So Star Wars, it's a good movie.
Yeah.
The,
It is.
um, you remember Harrison when we were doing the 50s with Nathan? We went to my number one, and I had talked about what is the greatest film you've ever seen, right? And the different. I talked about the difference between the greatest film you've ever seen and your favorite film, right?
Mhm.
And I don't know if you remember my answer, but my answer was the greatest film I've ever seen is Seven Samurai, and that was my number one in the 50s.
Right. Okay.
Now the circle is complete. Uh, my number one in the 70s is my favorite film of all time. Now, I would be cheating. I would have to cheat to make it my favorite film, meaning I would have to put Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi as one movie. That becomes my favorite film of all time, right? If that makes sense. So obviously it begins with Star Wars, and I guess what I will say, because I mean, we could talk for hours. I could talk about every single detail of the behind the scenes of how the film was made, on who hated it, on who loved it, on who was behind it, and who saved it at the last minute, and his wife, and the editors, and everyone involved, and all of the genius that came out. But I mean, there's documentaries out there like Empire of Dreams, which I would
Yes.
recommend to every person every year to watch every year. It's very important for the soul. And then ILM is also about the visual effects and how that came to be, how that was created. What I will say is that one of the reasons why Star Wars is my favorite film is because it made me want to make movies, right? So I feel like when we're talking about our favorites, it's got to be that impactful. It has to
Mhm.
be a film that has changed your life in such a way that no other movie has, or no other piece of art has, really, right? So Star Wars is on top of that list because at 9 years old, or 10 years old, when I watched Star Wars for the first time, and I saw the opening scene, right? So the scroll, comes up, and then the camera pans down, and the rebel ship comes into frame, and the big ass star destroyer,
Mhm.
envelopes and grosses the screen. Um, and immediately, in the way the camera is placed, low angle in space with the planet in the background, with the star destroyer in the foreground, and the rebel ship in the middle ground, but very small, showing its vulnerability, showing its weakness, and the star destroyer showing its power. That, for the first time, made me tick that someone was behind this. Someone was manipulating this. Someone was the puppet master, and had said to someone, "Hey, let's do this. Let's put the camera there. Let's have that ship go down here. It's going to be small, and this has to look powerful so that we understand what the story is going to be about without a single word of dialogue." Um, and that was the first moment where I didn't know what a director was, but I knew that someone was behind this. And I remember saying to myself at the time, that's what I want to do. I want to be the person who does that, whatever that means. So yeah, that's why Star Wars is number one on that list and will be number one forever, probably.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems that, yeah, with all of our number ones, like we have like so much to say about it, like because like you said, Adrien, like some of our favorites like impact us so deeply, and it's like that really can help you determine like which one would be like your favorite or like one of your favorites. So
It'd be cool to go through a list and just say, yeah, that was a good movie. Just that, and that's it. Just somebody, yeah, it's good.
My approach.
we'd be done in 10 minutes
Yeah,
instead of
it's a good film. Okay, next. Good. No, but I really loved it, and like talking about the making of Star Wars is a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong conversation because it is the movie that, against all odds, kind of went out and and came out with a bang, like no film has ever done before or after on that scale, at that level. And so yeah, there's a lot to be said, and there's a lot of praise to be sung about the visual effects artists John Stryska and Ken Ralston and Marcia Lucas, the editor, who was his wife at the time. There's a lot of people that have, that without them, like Ralph McQuarrie, the concept art designer, right? A lot of these people, John Williams, of course, they have built such a world, and they have worked so tirelessly on this film that, yeah, it's something that's quite magical. When magic comes out of this, it's so pure, and it goes beyond just a good film. It goes beyond a good script. It goes beyond a good story. It just becomes movie magic. And I guess that's why we're here in the first place. So,
Well said.
you go.
All right. Well, that is the end of all of our lists. Woohoo.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I am super down for Watership.
Watership Down. I am
Down.
always glad to tangent about Watership Down for forever, honestly.
So
Like,
that's
if you
great.
think that I said so much about like the movie, wait till you hear what I have to say about the book, because
Oh, shit.
holy shit, it's a freaking masterpiece. Oh my gosh! Like, I would
Amazing.
argue like both are in their own respective ways, in my personal opinion, but like the book is like absolutely like top tier, one of my favorite just pieces of art in general. Like,
That's amazing.
it's just so amazing. And Nathan has read it, and it's one of his favorites as well, I'm pretty sure.
He's watched the movie too. I saw his rating
Yeah.
on Letterboxd.
Yeah,
Oh,
even
good.
though I personally disagree with his rating, but whatever.
Yeah, it's just a 2.5.
But whatever. Yeah. So
That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. Thank you for Kalo Down.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Yeah. Cool. So next up is
Is the 80s.
please.
the 80s.
Yes, so we'll talk off camera when we'll do that one, but it'll be next month in September.
Beautiful.
But just want to say thank you guys again for coming on today, and go ahead and plug yourselves where people can follow you and listen to your reviews as well.
Did you put our links in the?
I did, yes. So
Right.
all their links are in the description. Make sure to follow both Adrien and Michelle. They got some great content. And yeah,
Cool. Awesome. So thank you so much, Harrison, for having us, as always. I love, coming back every decade. 4K Lowdown's excited for the 80s. So am I.
yes.
I actually,
Me
my
too.
favorite films are from
Me
the
too.
80s, weirdly. Like, I know it's like supposed to be this era of like uncreativity, but I actually think that some of the best movies came out during that.
I really like the 80s because that is when Hayao Miyazaki really started with his film career.
Yeah.
And let's just say you'll see a couple of his movies on my list. I can
Yeah.
already guarantee a couple of his are already going to be on there. So
In the 80s, I believe.
that's when
I don't believe me as well.
well, his first feature film was The Castle of Cagliostro, which was 78 or 79, but like
Oh.
the 80s was when, like, I think it was 82 when like he sort of like made more of like his personalized sort of original content,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I actually I from Spirited Away will be on my list, but that's 2000s.
Me too.
Yeah, of course. But that's for later down the road. Just wondering, because I don't know how many people are there, but if anyone has any questions in the comments, or
Yeah.
when he talks about their list or any film, we could stay for another like 2, I guess.
Yeah.
And if there's nothing else, we'll bounce.
Mhm.
But no, I think yeah, Miyazaki. Yeah, for me, the I know he started in the 80s, but the 90s or when was Princess Mononoke?
97. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So 90s 2000s is my Howl's
Yeah,
Moving
that's
Castle.
kind of like where he peaked, I would
Right.
say.
Right.
Definitely. But honestly, like I love almost all of his movies. Like honestly, like it's so freaking incredible that of the movies that I've seen of his, which I think I've seen all of like his feature films, there's not a bad movie. And it's like, how do you do that? How do you do that? Oh my gosh. He's just a
I don't know
freaking
if you've seen the
genius.
documentary of his. It's quite interesting. It's like,
It was like when he was making The Wind Rises, right?
yeah, when he makes the
Yeah.
wind rises and he's just, you know, writer's block, smoking a cigarette
Mm.
and just looking at the plants for 5 minutes. And that's that's one scene of the doc. Okay, okay, IIO. Fantastic. I mean, if you can do it, we can do it. Like if
Yeah.
that guy has writer's block, can you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, it's funny to just see these people as human beings because
Yeah.
they're not human,
Yeah.
you know. So funny to see that sometimes. That's great. Well, it doesn't seem like anyone has
But
any
just to
questions.
repeat what Adrien said, yeah, Harrison, thanks for letting us be on here. I always approve of someone who lets me rant about Watership Down for like a solid 10 minutes.
Yeah,
So
of
I
course.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Of course.
And go watch the depressing films, okay?
Yes. Go watch the depressing films.
Back to back.
Yes, back to back. Let us know if you're still alive.
Wait, Lowdown is asking for a summary of because he came in on number 4.
Oh.
Yeah. What was number 1, 2? You want to do 1, 2, 3? Harrison, yours and mine and Michelle's.
Yeah, I got them right here. So Adrian's is Star Wars.
No.
10 to 1.
Wait, I unfortunately came in when you were on number 4. So 10 to 10 to 5. Yeah.
5. Okay. So my number 10 was Robin Hood. Michelle's was Claudine. Adrian's Close Encounters, Third Kind. My number 9 was Rocky. Then Michelle's number 9 was God's Spell. That's spell,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And then Adrian's was Taxi Driver. My number 8 was Jaws. Michelle's was Rocky. And Adrian's was Days of Heaven. My number 7 was Superman the movie, one from 1978. Michelle's was Monty Python Holy Grail. Adrian was Jaws. My number 6 was Fiddler on the Roof. Michelle's was Girlfriends. Adrian's was Chinatown. And then my number 5 was The Muppet Movie. Michelle's was the Winnie the Pooh movie. And then Adrian's was Autumn Sonata. So I'll put, maybe I could put a list.
Definitely, you can see the different tastes between each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. And
It's our pleasure.
we'll see you next month. Make sure to subscribe to Really Old Movies and also to Adrien at Tarana Cinema and Michelle at the Awkward Actor. All of their links are in the description. And like I said, we'll come back again next month about the 1980s. And yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much. This has been Really Old Movies. Take care.
Thank you, Harrison. Bye-bye.